In Daniel chapter 3, King Nebuchadnezzar tested the loyalty of his staff and found some that failed. If God tested your loyalty today, how would you stack up? Hey guys, Pastor Spencer here, and this week we finished up the last part of Daniel chapter 3, and our brave and loyal heroes here are about to be tossed into the blazing furnace for not worshiping the idol that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Now, as we read into this narrative some more, it's clear that this may have been more than just idol worship and more than just an exercise in the king's vanity. This may have actually been a test in the loyalty of the king's staff. You see, the way Babylon functioned at this point in time was a government comprised of all of the best and brightest throughout every conquered land. And so they had Chaldeans and Persians and Hebrews and Babylonians and basically people of all kinds. And as Daniel chapter 3 verse 4 says, "Then the herald cried out aloud, 'To you it is commanded, O peoples, nations, and languages.'" So it kind of gives us evidence that what we've got here is a mixed bag of people, nations, and religions. As we see in history, one of the most powerful tools to unite people is faith and religion. And this is why we see God is more into relationship rather than religion, but that's a video subject for another day. So this loyalty test shows up in the form of worshiping an idol, and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abed-Nego hold to their conviction and reject the king's worship. And they do this respectfully, but ultimately it lands them in the hot seat as the king orders them to be thrown into the furnace. Now, scholars have put forward that this kind of furnace is likely the same kind of furnace used for smelting large quantities of gold, which King Nebuchadnezzar clearly had. So the idea of smelting is that the super hot fire would burn away any impurities that are in the gold, leaving nothing but the purest product at the end. Malachi 3 verse 2 and 3 describe the Lord as one who refines his people in that same process. It says, "But who can endure the day of his coming, and who can stand when he appears? For he is like a refiner's fire and launderer's soap. He will sit as a refiner and purifier of silver. He will purify the sons of Levi and purge them as gold and silver, that they may offer to the Lord an offering of righteousness." So God will purify his people, and it may take some fire and some pain to do that. But what's interesting about our story here in Daniel is that first, the Lord was with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abed-Nego, just like he will be with us during our fires and our trials. And second is that the only thing that was burned off of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abed-Nego was the ropes that bound them. In John 8:34, Jesus says, "I tell you the truth, anyone who sins is a slave to sin." The point further backed up in Hebrews 12:1, "Therefore we also, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us, and let us run the race with endurance, the race that is set before us." Okay, so the picture here is that God has justified us with the blood of Christ on the cross and set us on a mission for the kingdom, but we cannot be effective in that mission if we're still slaves to sin. We will still be bound by it and tripped up by it. And so this sanctification process that we see here is not to be taken lightly. The Lord will burn off the sins that bind our hands so that we can be effective in glorifying the Lord, just like we saw Shadrach, Meshach, and Abed-Nego free from their ropes in the fiery furnace to bring honor to the God that saves. And with that kind of freedom, we can run the race with endurance and purpose. And at the end of the race, it's my heart's desire that I will hear, "Well done, good and faithful servant," and not hear, "Get away from me, I never knew you." As Proverbs 17:3 says, "The refining pot is for silver and the furnace for gold, but the Lord tests hearts." If the Lord tested your heart today, what would he have to burn away? I would make that your challenge this week, and make that your prayer, that you allow the Lord to bring to light and burn away anything unclean so that we can be free to purely serve the Lord. So gather your friends and family and download the study guide, and let's drive deeper into Scripture together. And I'll catch you right here next week on The Drive.